Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear respected brothers and sisters, ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaba. Welcome to episode 9 of the Homeschool Minaret. The Homeschool Minaret is a webinar series dedicated to exploring parenting, spiritual growth, and education through an Islamic lens. Alhamdulillah, tonight is our ninth episode, and tonight's episode is called Happy Tummies Nurturing Children's Gut Health. Today, we have a very, very special guest, all the way from Massachusetts, USA. We have Dr. Tuyyub Hassan. As you know, at Inspire, at the Homeschool Minaret, we only bring you the best of the best. And today, Alhamdulillah, we brought you somebody who is a consultant gastroenterologist with years and years and years of experience in his field. He's at the top of his game. We brought him in to discuss this topic. And today's format, as usual, our special guest will discuss, will present for about 20 to 25 minutes. And then after that, we'll have a live Q&A session. If you do want to ask any questions, feel free to send in your questions whilst our guest is speaking. And inshallah, we'll go through as many questions as possible at the end. And now, without further ado, I'd like to pass it on to our special guest, Dr. Tuyyub Hassan. Bismillah, Doc.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل سيدنا وعلى محمد وبارك وسلم وصلي عليه Sheikh Saqib, Jazakallah, thank you for inviting me to your illustrious program. Also to Maulana Omar as well. I appreciate this opportunity. It's a big topic to talk about, healthy tummies and diet. But inshallah, we'll try and at least get an introduction to it. Maybe we can do a follow-up seminar or discussion based on some of these topics at a future date, inshallah. So I really just wanted to, first of all, talk about the spiritual aspects of that. There are many ayat from the Holy Quran, which I'm sure many people have probably read, that talk about halal, haram, about, foods that are tayyib or pure or wholesome versus things that are haram and which may be, damaged for your spiritual and physical health. And these are two ayahs I've chosen from Surah Al-Baqarah. أعوذ بالله الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس كلوا مما في الأرض حلالا طيبا ولا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين. This is a general address to humanity, not specifically to the believers, that eat what's lawful and good and do not follow the footsteps of shaitan because he's your enemy. And that illustrates how food can be used as a weapon by shaitan or by the minions of shaitan or by people that don't necessarily agree with the approach of our Prophet ﷺ. And so food can be weaponized. There can be noxious foods, as we know, haram things like pork, alcohol, intoxicants. And all these are tools of shaitan which are there to destroy us. And the second ayah Karima is addressed more towards the believers. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كلوا من طيبات ما رزقناكم واشكروا لله إن كنتم إياه تعبدون, which is the spiritual aspect. The food is not just something you consume for enjoyment or pleasure, although that's something you get from it. You should be thankful for that, but at the same time, it's about being a servant of Allah. And food is a means, as a vehicle to develop your physical and spiritual growth, give you the energy to fulfill your responsibilities as a father, as a son, as a worshipper of Allah. So that's the spiritual element of that. And just a very quick anecdote. There's once a Sahabi was building a window in his house. The Prophet ﷺ asked him, why are you building this window? And he said, Ya Rasul, is going to appreciate the fresh air, the beauty, etc. And the Prophet ﷺ said, if you had the intention that you were building this window to hear the azan, then you would have gotten reward for that. So food can be a means of reward and spiritual development as well, inshallah. Um, so in terms of metabolics, again, I'm assuming that most of the audience are pretty much most of all audience will be from, Pakistani, Indian, South Asian background. Um, in terms of our genetics, in terms of, our background, South Asians were extremely high risk for diabetes, and I'm sure we all know people that have diabetes, maybe parents, family members, and depending on which literature you read, 2 to 6 times higher risk of diabetes as compared to other populations. And diabetes itself Again, you may know people that have these complications. It can damage pretty much anything, your heart, your eyes, your kidneys, your nervous system, even your GI tract, etc. And again, and also amongst our community, there may be higher levels of smoking, high fat diets, low levels of exercise, genetics. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but again, we have lower muscle mass, which increase the risk for what we call insulin resistance. Insulin meaning that the insulin can't work and do its job to control the sugar. What concerns me as a gastroenterologist and liver specialist is one thing I'm seeing really commonly, and it's a sort of a silent epidemic. A lot of people don't know about this. It's something called fatty liver. And they say that almost 30% of people living in South Asia um, may have this condition, and it is a very worrying condition. Normally, in the past, we would see hepatitis C as a big risk factor for liver damage. Then liver damage can take 20, 15, 20 years to develop. So it's not something you might notice until it's too late. So basically what happens is, the fat accumulates over time and the fat causes inflammation. And about 20% of those people that, if you look at this, this diagram over here, the fatty liver becomes a scarred liver. Scarred liver becomes a very extremely damaged liver, what we call cirrhosis. And then that becomes liver failure and liver cancer. So this is something that I'm seeing a lot more in my practice, something we're seeing more in our communities because of diet and other factors. Um, and again, going back to, because this is mostly about parents and for kids, the reason why I'm mentioning these things is because these bad habits and these diseases that start in the younger years, that's the age where you can change the mindset, you can develop the good habits which will last a lifetime, inshallah. Mm. Again, going back to some of the factors, um, Asian diet, and even in fact, actually, I would say even the Middle Eastern diet, actually, sort of the East generally, too much fried food, extremely high carbs, a lot of sugary drinks, and even in my own family, I see that a lot. There's always got to have a Coca-Cola or Iron Brew or something like that with their meals. Large portions, overeating, and we see that a lot, in special functions like marriages and stuff like that. Not enough exercise, people are busy with their families, they're busy with their jobs. They don't get the weather's not good. They don't get enough chance to go outside and walk and stuff like that. Genetics. Again, mention this a little bit more detail. We are more predisposed towards fat accumulation in the Asian population, especially around the midsection. So that's a genetic issue. And there might be a survival element to that. Back in the day when we were, all our ancestors were living in India, Pakistan, etc. They were prone to famines. Food wasn't easily available, so it was a survival advantage to be able to deposit fat easily because you would use those fat stores for your, agricultural work, for laboring in the fields and stuff. Obviously now we don't do those things. We're sitting in the car, we're sitting in the office, we're driving around, we don't really getting out, we're not doing the manual labor that we were doing, our ancestors were doing in the past. So genetics, cultural factors, a fatalistic you know, attitude. And I used to see that a lot in the UK actually, in my patients. The Pakistani background, they would say, "Kuch nahi hua, doctor साहब, जो कुछ लिखे है वो ही होना." But basically, whatever will happen. You don't need to tell me to control my diet. I don't need to do, cut my portions. It's fine. If I'm going to die, I'm going to die. It's fine. Leave me be. And so that sort of cultural, fatalistic approach has to be changed as well, especially for the kids. Um, So some basic recommendations, and I'll mention in the resources, there's a lot more information. It's hard to really go over this in due depth, but inshallah, just focus on some big things. So sugar is a big thing, and fizzy drinks, I mentioned that already. Um, so basically, the recommendation is you shouldn't be having more than 50 grams of sugar a day. And to put that in perspective, that's about 12 teaspoons of sugar a day. So if you drink one can of regular Coke or Iron Brew or Fanta or whatever, you've pretty much almost reached your daily requirement of sugar. So basically, if you have one can, you're done. So that's the way to look at that. You should try and replace those with water or milk. For the kids, maybe whole milk would be better if they're developing. For adults, low-fat milk, skimmed milk, almond milk is also available these days, oat milk, all sorts of other types of milks you can get. Instead of using sugary snacks, use fruit as the main dessert. And a word of warning, smoothies, it's concentrated sugar. You're taking all the natural sugar from fruits and you're concentrating it. So it's not the same as having a piece of fruit. Having a smoothie is not necessarily a low-calorie option or a healthy option. Pakistani people, we love parathas in the morning, a lot of, extra butter and stuff on there, even in chapatis, but try and replace the paratha with chapati, um, preferably whole grain and avoiding the white, white flour. I think a lot of people know this already, but fried foods avoid if you can, all costs, except on the odd occasions. Baked, grilled, broiled. Reduce oil in curries. I still see a lot of the older generation, even my own mom, using a lot of oil for the curries, and you don't need that much oil. You only need maybe like a tablespoon. Use more sort of vegetables and in the curries, more water, stuff like that. Use non-stick pans, but preferably without the plastics. Microplastics is a big thing now. More recognition of long-term damage with microplastic exposure. White rice replaced with brown or mixed. Snacks, fruit, especially apples are very good. A lot of fiber in apples. Dates are very nice actually because you got glucose and you got fiber in it at the same time. So you got the slow burn, you got the quick energy repletion. Nuts, preferably unsalted. Low fat yogurt instead of crisps or sweets. Um, ghee is a big, big danger to us. Ghee basically solidifies in your arteries, blocks your arteries up. So if you can replace with vegan ghee, olive oil. The Prophet loved olive oil. According to Shmuel Tirmidhi, Prophet loved olive oil. You mentioned to use it on your bodies and massaging it. Rapeseed oil, nut oil. Smoking, unfortunately, is still very common amongst our community, shisha, younger community. A lot of people in the younger, even females using that. I see that a lot. It's just bad news. Avoid at all costs. Role models. As parents, we have to be role models. If we're telling the kids to eat healthy and we ourselves are stuffing our face and we're drinking the sodas and stuff like that, then that's not a good role model. And there's a famous story, a folk story. You may have heard this story, maybe based on some true event that a lady takes her son to the sheikh, and she says to the sheikh, he eats a lot of sweets. Sheikh's having him to stop eating sweets, and the sheikh says, "Come back in a week." So she brings him back in a week, and then the sheikh tells the boy, you need to stop eating sweets, listen to your mum. And the lady's wondering, Sheikh said, why did you say this last week? Why did you wait a week? And the sheikh said, because I myself was guilty of over consuming sweets. How could I tell your son to stop eating sweets if I'm doing it myself? So I had to wean myself off first before I could give sincere advice that would have an impact on your son. Um, Home versus eating out. So eating out, I mean, it's fine, it's a good social thing to meet people and eat out, but there are risks with that. You don't always know what's in the food. You don't know preservatives people are using. A lot of patients I have, they're chefs. And to be honest with you, if you saw the personal hygiene of some of these people, you might be put off eating out forever. Um, so if you can eat out, if you can cook at home is always a better option. You know what you put in the food, you know what's in it, you know your own hygiene standards. Also Mubaraka at home, you can read ayah karimas, you can read the nats, you can listen to Holy Quran while you're cooking the food. So that adds more barakah to your food, more blessings in it, and the kids will enjoy it more as well. And the little anecdote on that, my own mum told a story once that she said a lady brought her kids to the house, and the kids were very, happy to eat the food. And the lady said with all sincerity to my mum that my kids don't usually eat other people's, so they're very picky, and they really enjoyed your food. And my mum said because it was made with love, so that extra element, that a mother can have or some relative can have at the home environment, you're not going to get that in a restaurant necessarily. Um, Fish, always try and chop and change your diet a little bit. Don't, I see that in America a lot. People here love red meat, and that's Pakistanis and all sorts of people. They overconsume the red meat. Try and mix the red meat. Don't have too much of it. Have it maybe once a week. Mix it up with fish, with poultry. Um, so fish might be sardines, salmons, omega 3. Omega 3 is very good for brain development. It's good for reducing triglycerides, good for your joints. You can also get that from omega 3 from nuts, flax seeds, dark green vegetables, soy. Another thing we're guilty of reusing oils. If you use oil once, don't reuse it again because it breaks down and those breakdown products can be very harmful towards your health. Fiber, more fiber. This is a big problem. Even when I was in the UK, see that a lot with kids. Constipation, extremely common in children. So fiber is basically, what we call a complex carbohydrate. Your body takes time to break it down. As it's broken down, it helps regulate sugar, it helps regulate blood pressure. It can protect you against cancer. Fluid comes in to help absorb the fiber, and that can reduce constipation because it makes the stools more consistent. And as a gastroenterologist, I can tell you it reduces the risk for cancer as well. So it's really, really important. And fiber sources can include, vegetables, prune juice, apples, oranges, lentils, grains, all these sort of things. Exercise is really, really important. Um, we don't get enough of that. If you're younger than 18, you need at least 1 hour a day of some sort of activity. And if you're, older than that, then 150 minutes a week, or 75 minutes of intense exercise every week. And the benefits of exercise can't be overstated. It helps with your blood pressure, helps with cancer, with heart disease. You release things called endorphins. Endorphins are natural feel-good chemicals, and it's good for depression. So it's very good. We have a lot of depression in our community. It's a taboo subject. We don't talk about it. And so exercise is a really good way of helping your natural chemicals to make you feel good. Um, and I've mentioned a little definition here of moderate versus intense. So moderate, like a brisk walk, swimming, biking, gardening, even gardening. Intense, running, sprinting, weightlifting. Mm. This you can get this on any website on the NHS, and basically it's gives you an idea sort of if you have a plate of food, what should be on that plate of food, and you can see like a significant portion of that is fruit and vegetables. And if I've seen myself when you go to these functions, if there's a lot of vegetables there, the Pakistanis will always go for the meat, and you'll hardly see anybody putting, as a dressing, the fruits and the veg. So fruit and veg is very important. So you get an idea. It's almost like 25%, 30% of your plate. Potatoes, bread, rice, pasta, other things like that. That should be about a third. Dairy, maybe about 15%. Beans, pulses, fish, eggs. It tells you over there 2 portions fish per week, less red processed meat. Cut back on pakoras, samosas. Always look at the labels. One good thing about the UK and Europe, which we don't have in America, the food industry here is really, really bad, very opaque. And if you talk about Dajjal, as I would say, it's a Dajjalic system because they hide stuff from you. You don't know what's in the food. But in the UK, you got a bit more transparency. Always check the label, see what's in the food. Look at the salt content, look at the carbs, look at the energy, the calories you get, and use that to help you and your family. Intermittent fasting, for kids, that's not going to be a big issue. It's more for the adults. It's just very brief. There's different ways of doing it. There's a 16/8 approach, which is basically for 16 hours a day, you fast, 8 hours you don't fast. But even when you're eating, you don't overeat, you don't overindulge. You have small meals. The 5 to 2 approach, 5 days a week you eat regularly, 2 days a week you cut your calories way down to 500 calories, 600 calories. And it has worked. I've seen patients do it, and it has worked, and they do lose weight significantly. It can boost memory, improve blood pressure, endurance, improves diabetes. Again, as Muslims, we recommend it to fast anyway. If we do it, we'll get rewards, spiritual and physical. If the non-Muslims do it, they only get the physical benefits. So it depends also on your point of view and how you look at it. So it can be used in a spiritual and worldly benefits as well. A quick comment on a few things about some nutrients. Vitamin D. deficiency, extremely common, very, very common in our community. Vitamin D is really important for bone strength, helps your immune system. There's been a lot of links with depression, multiple sclerosis, diabetes, cancers. These haven't been totally proven, but if there's a link there, it can be possible, that it can be playing a role. In our community, we eat a lot of flour, chapatis. There's a thing called phytate, and that can bind to zinc, calcium, and iron. So we can have deficiencies of these things if we eat a lot of unrefined flour and chapatis and stuff that's not fortified. In our community, lack of sunlight, we cover up, obviously. Skin, our darker skin, we don't absorb um, sunlight as well. Osteomalacia, rickets, these are severe forms of vitamin D deficiency which can cause permanent damage. It's still rare, but it's increasing in the UK and maybe underdiagnosed. So that would present as pain. Kids, if the kids are complaining of pain in their bones, take it seriously. Don't ignore that. Get your GP to check that out. Maybe they need vitamin D. Maybe they need to be assessed for that. So it's really, really important. Supplements. I recommend just taking a supplement. It's easier than diet and other things, and you can't really overdose. It's really hard to overdose on vitamin D. I'll be honest with you. The UK recommendations are 400 units or 10 micrograms per day. That's probably on the lower side. I would say you need at least 800 micrograms or 20 micrograms or 800 units a day, and especially during the winter months. So definitely, think about that and supplementing your diet, vitamin D. Iron deficiency, another thing, I'm mentioning this more for our ladies, girls, again, it's a taboo subject. A lot of ladies may not talk about it with their family or even with their GPs, but iron deficiency is extremely common. They may have chronic fatigue, memory problems, irritability. Iron deficiency can affect your growth, memory. It can cause pain, cramps, breathing problems. So, if there's a lot of tiredness amongst the ladies, they should think about that and get that checked, especially if they have heavy periods. Also, diet, again, I just mentioned like flour, the iron may be getting not absorbed because of flour. Tea is a very common in our community. Tea blocks iron absorption. Not enough dark green leafy vegetables. Thalassemia may coexist with iron deficiency. Thalassemia is basically an abnormal type of shape of the hemoglobin. It's really common amongst our community. A lot of people may have the mild form of it. There's not a treatment for it, but it can be associated with fatigue and anemia, and it may be with iron deficiency. So it's worth getting checked for that. And if people get married to other people that have the genes, it can cause severe problems in kids. Celiac disease is basically where your body recognizes gluten, which is a part of wheat products, as an enemy, and it can cause damage to your GI tract and cause iron deficiency, weak bones, failure to grow. So it's something your GP can check with a blood test. Parasite infections, not that common in the UK, but if people have been traveling to Pakistan or Bangladesh, other countries, they may pick these up, and that might be causing iron deficiency and growth problems. So worth getting that checked out. So some resources in the UK, there's Heart Health, Heart UK. You can see these resources here. Really good resources actually. Cholesterol Smart, South Asian diets, healthy living. So there's a lot of good advice on these websites. Again, heart disease kills. It's really common. The time to change is now, when you're young. Don't leave it till you're older, because when it comes, it can be devastating. So that's all I have to say. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام عليك سيدي يا رسول الله.
Jazakallahu khairan wa ahsanul jazak for that, Doc. That was very, very insightful. We do have a few questions that have been coming through, so I'll just read them out to you, inshallah, one by one. And we know you don't have too much time, but inshallah we'll try to get through as many questions as
Sure.
possible. So we've got one question here. I'll just read it out. So we treat coffee like a harmless habit, but it's a stimulant pushing the brain and gut into overdrive. Could this daily push be quietly disrupting digestion or the gut-brain connection without symptoms? So yeah, I think we're all addicted to coffee, to caffeine. So Doc, what's your thoughts on that?
Subhanallah. Beautiful question. Great question. I like that question actually. It's a really good question. And I'm glad you mentioned the brain-gut access. I didn't talk about probiotics in my talk for lack of time, but inshallah, I can, if you ever want me to do a follow-up on some of these issues, I can talk about that. But that's a really important topic, brain gut and the gut biome. So coffee is actually really good for you. 2 to 4 cups a day, but the proviso is when I'm talking about coffee, not black coffee. As soon as you add sugar and milk, it doesn't work. That's the science behind it. And you neutralize whatever, flavonoids or other good antioxidants you have in the coffee, you get neutralized. So basically, 2 to 4 cups a day of black coffee can be very helpful for your health. Um, it can protect you from cancer. It can good for your heart. It can protect you from disease of the liver. So I do recommend that in practice. If I have patients with liver disease, I do say to them drink coffee between 2 to 4. And if you don't want to do coffee, then green tea is also acceptable. Again, without milk, without sugar, just green tea by itself. You can add maybe a little bit of honey there if you're not, a really bad diabetic. You can add a little bit of honey for taste. But yeah, that's the proviso. The lattes, the cappuccinos, they're not good for you. They've got a lot of calories. So it has to be black coffee. Um, Decaffeinated versus caffeinated, the jury's still out on that. Whether you still have the same benefit. Most likely you probably do. But the other point about it being a stimulant, you're right, it is a stimulant. And some of the Sufis and the Buzurgan Deen would use coffee, maybe to keep them awake at night for ibadah and stuff like that. It's not that harmful, I would say, as compared to many other things like alcohol and all those other bad stuff. If you want to use it, it's fine. Pregnant woman, that's one area where you have to be really, really careful. It can be associated with negative outcomes in pregnant women. So pregnant women should really limit their coffee intake. Maybe they should avoid it altogether.
So yeah, I think we've heard it from the expert. Keep drinking your coffee, 2 to 4 cups a day. Just make sure it's black and make sure you drink it before you start your worship. So next question, we've
Yeah,
got
sorry, brother. Sorry, one thing there is be careful with coffee. Don't take it before you go to bed at night, unless you're doing it specifically for, you want
worship.
to wait for worship or something like that. Because the reason is, if you're going to do something that you need a good sleep, it might impair your sleep. So if you only have coffee, have it in the morning. But if you have those other ambitions to stay awake at night, that's fine. And also during Ramadan, I've mentioned this before in other talks. You have to be wary of caffeine withdrawal, which can be really bad. You can have high headaches, double vision, irritability. So before Ramadan Mubarak, I always recommend wean off maybe like a week or two before Ramadan Mubarak because you can get really bad caffeine withdrawal. In fact, with tea as well, actually. So just be wary of that. Yeah.
Perfect, Jazakallah. Just as a quick follow-up, how many hours before sleeping should we have our last cup of coffee?
So I get so that's a very loaded question because it depends on what type of coffee you're taking. So if you're making, the instant coffee, you can put just like a small amount and it'd probably be fine to take that maybe like 3, 4 hours. But if you're buying like a Starbucks or you get one of those, pod Keurig K-cups, there's a lot of caffeine in there. So you're talking about a very potent high from one of those types of things. So if you're doing instant coffee, maybe like a teaspoon, maybe you could do like, a few hours before. But if you're talking about one of those concentrates, maybe like very early in the day or maybe, early morning or early afternoon.
Okay, Jazakallah for that. The next question is someone's asked fish and milk. Is this something that we shouldn't combine together? Is that a fact or is that a myth? Fish and milk, eating fish and drinking milk at the same time.
I've never heard this before. I'm not aware of that would be a contraindication. Um, as you know, Brother Sakib, the Prophet would mix foods. Like he would, for example, he would mix dates with cucumbers, because the date has what you call a garam tasir, it has a hot, natural composition. Whereas cucumbers are cool, so he'd mix those two foods to
Mm.
neutralize. Um, so I'm not sure on that question. I don't know the exact answer to that. My instinct or based on what I know, I would say that I don't think there's any truth
Okay,
to.
and then there's a very similar question, which is watermelon and milk. So I'm guessing it's the
Yeah,
same thing, or
yeah, I've heard this before. People, it's like my mom used to say, I don't drink water with watermelon. Again, there's not really any scientific evidence for that. Watermelon, as you know, itself is rich with water, so it wouldn't really make sense that, I mean, you shouldn't need water to be honest, when you're If you've ate watermelon, you know how full you feel. You don't really feel thirsty after. But if you want to take water, I guess I don't think there's any harm in it.
Okay, Jazakallah for that. And then the next question is there any truth to claims that sleeping shortly after eating causes the gut immense harm?
MashaAllah. That's a really good question. I like that question. So, there's some truth to this, actually. If you suffer from heartburn, but actually, even if you didn't suffer from heartburn, so normally people that are prone to heartburn, we recommend like don't eat 2 to 3 hours, uh, don't sleep between 2 to 3 hours of eating. So if you're going to eat, if you're going to sleep, say you sleep at your 10 o'clock is your bedtime, you should have your last meal, 8 o'clock or something like that. Because, your body, your stomach's starting to churn the food, the acid is being produced, you're starting to break it down. So if you're lying on your side, you could easily regurgitate the food up and it could cause damage to your esophagus. So there is truth to that. The Prophet ﷺ would recommend sleeping on the right side, as you know. But for this type of thing, that it's easier for acid to go up if you're on your right side. So from a medical point of view, if people have really bad reflux, we recommend on the left side. But from the point of view of Sunnah, right, it's the right side, obviously. But with the food, definitely avoid going straight to bed after eating food, definitely.
Jazakallah for that. Next question is about the carnivore diet. Recently, there's been a lot of discussion online about the carnivore diet, mainly meat, no plant foods. I think you touched on this during your presentation as well, how South Asians go straight for the meat, but this person wants to go for meat and meat only. What impact could such a diet have on gut health, especially in children?
Yeah, so ketone diet, I don't recommend. That's the
Okay.
Atkins diet, I think, is what the person's referencing there, if I'm not mistaken. I don't really recommend it. Is it one of those crash and burn things? It works. You overload your body with the red meat and all that sort of stuff. The long-term effects I don't think would be good for your heart and for your health. So I don't recommend that. Again, I'll go back to the presentation. A balanced diet is always preferable. Mixing up with fruit, vegetables, fish, poultry. I do not recommend these types of fad diets, ketone diets, Atkins diet. If people have done them, it takes a lot of them. I've seen, people do it. Short-term benefit, yeah, you lose weight and stuff, but long-term, I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah, Jazakallah for that. And at what age can young children start fasting safely?
So, so you know better than me, bro. Sheikh Sahib,
You can
you know,
give the medical sort of input.
so from the Sharia point of view, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not an alim or a scholar, but puberty would be, considered the age at which uh, you know, you could start fasting or you should be fasting, according, the fard would be upon you. So I think if you're healthy, you don't have any medical issues, you don't have celiac disease, you don't have diabetes, you don't have any that would be the fine age to start fasting. So if you have health issues, that's a different dimension. If you have some other ailments, you have severe asthma, you got celiac disease, you got something else going on, then yes, then fasting may be detrimental towards you, and you can always have an uzr or an excuse per Sharia. Our religion is not harsh like that, but if it's a mashallah, if it's a normal healthy child, I would say from puberty onwards is fine.
I think this question is asking more from the angle of sometimes you might have an enthusiastic 8, 9, 10 year old, and they want to keep one fast or they want to keep two fasts in Ramadan. From a medical perspective, what are your thoughts on something like that, for example?
I don't think there's any problem. My own kids have done it, alhamdulillah. To get them in the habit of fasting, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. They don't have to do the full, you know, 30 days, but you could do half a day, you could do a full day. You could, say, okay, let's do it. But if you're feeling dizzy, you feel lightheaded, you don't feel well, let me know. You can break your fast. It's fine. Allah will forgive you. It's okay. So like, you're right, kids do want to participate. They're excited. They want to do it. Then let them do it. But always give them a way out. Don't make them feel compulsed. And say to them, if you're feeling lightheaded, you're feeling dizzy, you're feeling, whatever, let me know. Let your mum know. Let your dad know. It's fine. It's okay. You can break the fast.
Yeah, Jazakallah for that. And the final question is, should my child take probiotics or fiber supplements?
So there's no harm in that, but the fiber works with water. If you don't take a good amount of water with fiber, it'll cause you more trouble. So 5 to 6, 7 glasses of water a day. You want to keep hydrated with fiber. Otherwise, the fiber will just become like a jelly and a goo, and it'll make you more sick with bloating and stuff like that. So you really got to increase your water intake. Probiotics, I do recommend. It depends what you're taking for. There's different types of probiotics. Probiotics, it's not like a one homogeneous block. Probiotics is there's different types. It's like its own science. So if you're taking a probiotic for digestive health specifically, that's fine. I have no issue with that. And a fiber supplement is good. Like I said, constipation is really common in kids. I see a lot of kids with that. When I was a GP back home in the UK, I see a lot of kids with that. So I have no problem with fiber. But the proviso, the key thing is the water intake, the fluid intake has to be really good. Not sodas, not fruit juice. Water has to be really good as well.
Jazakallah khairan wa ahsanul jaza for that. So I think we'll wrap things up there. Very, very, very beneficial. I find it extremely beneficial, and I'm sure all of the listeners will benefit immensely as well. So just a quick announcement before we conclude. Inshallah, our next episode is in 2 weeks' time. Today's episode was obviously about nourishing the physical body, and we know that this is important because the Prophet ﷺ taught us, "Inna li jasadika alayka haqqa," that your body has a right over you. In 2 weeks' time, inshallah, we're going to shift our focus and we're going to shift towards our spiritual body. We're going to bring on Qari Abdullah Hanouk. He is somebody, subhanallah, who had memorized the Quran at a young age, and he's also learned how to recite it in the 7 different variations. But the unique thing about this Hafid is that he's recited the entire Quran from beginning to end by heart without making any mistakes in one sitting over 40 times. And for those of you who are Huffaz, you'll know how difficult it is to read one juz or 2 juz by heart in one sitting without making mistakes. Subhanallah, this young Hafiz has recited the entire Quran from beginning to end in a single sitting over 40 times. And inshallah, he will join us in 2 weeks' time and he'll talk about his own journey, how he memorized the Quran, how he retains it, his relationship with the Quran. And also, he'll give us some tips on how we can encourage our children to become Hafiz of the Quran as well. And on that note, inshallah, we'll conclude today's session. Once again, massive, massive jazakallahu khairan to our special guest for taking some time out. SubhanAllah, it's Sunday afternoon over there in the States. Took some time out to educate us. And we pray that Allah, inshallah, preserves him. And we pray that Allah accepts this session today as a form of worship for all of us. And on that note, inshallah, we will conclude. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.